Hello and welcome back to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Dumbest Moments of the Week. Well, we've got quite the doozy of a video to share about AOC today, that's for sure. This time we're turning back to another one of her classic crazy, cringy, and uncomfortable live streams. Alex has embarrassed herself a number of times trying to pull this trick too. You know that old trick I'm talking about. Over the last year or so, politicians, but more specifically Democrats in particular, they've been doing this thing where they try and look relatable and hip and cool by doing live streams, usually on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or other social media. How could we forget the time Democratic Senator and presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren had that awkward beer on live stream with her husband, trying to make herself look less detached from average Americans, I guess. Then there was that unforgettable and strange choice another Dem candidate made, Beto O'Rourke. Remember that guy? I barely do. I almost forgot he even ran at this point. In fact, about all I remember about Beto O'Rourke and his whole presidential bid was the time he live streamed at his dentist appointment, pointing the camera into his mouth and everything. Rather odd and achieving quite the opposite of his leftist goal. Instead of looking relatable and down to earth, these guys look like they're trying to look that way. It's forced, and it makes them look even more detached and out of touch than they already are. Now back to AOC, who's also made her fair share of wannabe relatable internet live streams. We've covered a few before here too, because with Alex, they do get pretty interesting. Let's just say it's fun to watch her speaking on the fly, off the cuff, improvising so to speak, because when Cortez isn't well prepared and when her speeches and talking points aren't expressly written and spelled out for her, well, believe it or not, but she actually then begins to sound even more low IQ. Now, besides her spreading her usual lies or gross misunderstandings of things, there was also one now infamous moment worth mentioning here. Before we move on to her newest stream, previously and probably most famously, Alex got completely embarrassed when she streamed at her new apartment in Washington, D.C., and while there she discovered she had a garbage disposal, a common kitchen feature which Cortez apparently had never heard of. That's right, one of this country's leaders and elected officials, and one assigned to represent a significant portion of New York City, and well, she doesn't even know how a kitchen sink works. Garbage disposals are something I've always known about since I was a kid, but apparently some people don't have them in bigger, older cities like New York. That, or more likely, Alex has been so spoiled, pampered, and surrounded by servants her whole life, so she's probably never even been in a kitchen, or been taught how to clean or work things in there properly. Regardless of the why though, AOC not knowing what a garbage disposal was, and then talking about it on a live stream as if it was cute and not dramatically terrible and very telling, well, that was one of the delights and one of the best AOC moments of last year. But this time, this new live stream moment we're getting ready to talk about today, well, it very well could rival that garbage disposal disaster, believe it or not. While it's not as obvious or shocking as the disposal bit, but this recent live stream Alex did with her boyfriend, it was almost equally cringy. Basically, what came out last week was Alex streamed with her longtime boyfriend named Riley Roberts. Now that's not exposing or doxing the guy or anything either, because while Riley isn't nearly as infamous as his Latin lover, he is still in the spotlight somewhat, even publicly working with AOC, taking money from her campaign and everything. And Riley also got his own personal US government email and was attached to AOC's calendar. You can find more on those somewhat shady details on the internet later though, because for now we need to talk about this couple and their walking contradiction. That's oh so obvious and needs to be addressed directly before even getting to today's video. You see, as we all know, AOC is a pretty big anti-white racist. She hates white people, she talks shit about us all the time, and she always goes against normal average Americans like us. In fact, she spreads lies about us being racist when we're not, and even she calls us some kind of supremacist or 1940s German, if you know what I mean. Alex has said every stereotypical anti-white line in the book since getting into office too, which makes her seem rather hypocritical when she dates a white dude, doesn't it? This is actually pretty common with these kinds of liberals too though. They will go around bashing us all night and day in public, but when they come home at night, they still want to lay in bed with white people and marry us and have families with us too. CNN's Don Lemon is another great example of this, because by day, while he spreads the same kinds of fake supremacy, 1940s German propaganda on the news, well, at night, Don is also shacking up with a white dude too. Now this happens a lot for a number of reasons. Firstly, much of this hate coming from them is just based on jealousy. They actually really like our people and our cities and our countries and ways of life deep down. And that's why they end up choosing us for their life partners, their careers, and also the places of residence within our communities. But then at the same time, they resent themselves for doing so. And they want to still be woke and rooting for the underdog and getting victim points as well. So that's why they put on this anti-white front in public. And perhaps I would say it's likely a front these types of people put on even harder in order to try and compensate for their hypocrisy. But then another sad and sorry side of this trend and story is revealed when you think about what's going on in the heads of these white guys or the people dating these liberal racists who still go along with their bullshit and date people who hate them and us. Much like with AOC, it's pretty easy to assume people like AOC's Boo Riley, they must be self-hating of course, but also they're trying to date minorities to compensate themselves, compensating for their white guilt of course. In addition, there's a celebrity factor here, meaning these partners seem to be happy they're dating someone famous and prominent so much, it makes them happier to be there and more willing to take their BS. And while most of this can be easily assumed, and this is a pretty good and accurate breakdown, but it's still just guesswork somewhat, even if it is well done and probably right. But now when we finally get to today's video, we will see it confirms a lot of this outright. Next, let's look at the video in question posted by the New York Post, who clipped a very telling and interesting bit of AOC's recent live stream, where she and her white boyfriend talk about combating racism, but really, that's just how they want to frame a conversation where they bash on white people and call us all racist, and act as if we're the only ones who are racist too, when we're really not. We're actually the least racist and least likely to base opinions and actions on that factor. But regardless, and without further ado, let's go ahead and check out that clip and see what AOC and Riley have to say.
So Riley, what has been helpful to you in combating racism?
I think it's helpful and important to talk to other white people about racism. And I think a lot of people, they don't want to be racist. They don't think that they're racist, but they also don't know some of the things that they believe or say are and can be racist.
So they're accidental, unintentional racists who are also considered really racist by a small group of biased liberals who are chomping at the bit to call a group they obviously don't like racist? Wow, if you can't see how horribly wrong that is, I don't know what to tell you. Basically, first of all, accidental and unintentional racism are like the last thing we should be and need to be worrying about. So what if some old lady uses an outdated racial term somewhere? Who cares if a Walgreens happens to have more of a certain shade of foundation makeup? And if some teenager says a certain race is better at a specific sport and it comes off harsh or offensive accidentally, do we really need to devote this much effort to BS like that? Because that's what AOC and her boyfriend and people with similar SJW beliefs seem to be suggesting. Really, instead of word policing and trying to crack down on free speech, we should actually just be raising our kids and telling our friends and family to toughen up and be stronger and don't get so offended or butthurt all the time. Learn to let things go and don't dwell on smaller negatives, especially when there's so much good in the world out there and so many things to enjoy. The other thing I really don't like here is, first, the way AOC talks, of course. She introduces this saying, "How do you combat racism? Racism." And then her boyfriend turns right to white people for no good reason, suggesting we're the problem and we're all really racist or some BS. We're not. As stated previously, we're the least guilty of this. Really, it's woke SJWs and butthurt minorities who focus on race all night and day, and they group us and single us out and judge people based on their race all the time. And as for the most prevalent kind of racism in public and spreading today, I think this NoBS channel and our common coverage here has clearly pointed out that it's anti-white racism that we really need to be worrying about. There's no calls being made for less blacks or browns in, say, political office or in our population or in our movies or TV shows, but they are asking for less whites. And you would never see another race self-flagellate themselves and cater to and go along with their own demise and hatred, like what's going on with AOC's boyfriend right here. What a beta boy move, letting your girl tell you and your people you're all racist and not only going along with that, but helping her make that point by being this sort of token white person in her colorful pro-SJW, anti-white and anti-American squad. And she uses this white boyfriend as a token to let her get away with hating on whites at the same time. Lastly, before moving on, I want to talk about this loose definition of racism here. The guy is basically saying if he and his liberal cohorts think something is racist, that automatically makes it so, even if their logic or justification justification is more than questionable. At the end here, he even says that some white people don't know what they think or say is even racist. And this implies they need a liberal to come in and explain it to them. Maybe we should call that lib-splaining, because they do love spelling out why everyone else is wrong, even though they're the wrong ones. And I suggest we at least consider the possibility that it's the left-wingers who are actually wrong. They're the ones calling everything racist, and they're the ones who can't seem to use words properly anymore, and they can't stick to actual definitions. So why would we take the words of a group who says all white people are automatically racist, while also honestly believing minorities can't even be racist at all, in some weird and convoluted way that, of course, surprise surprise, makes the liberals basically bulletproof and physically unable to be offensive according to them, and also their beliefs make everyone they don't like and disagree with automatically racist and easily dismissed. How convenient. And it just seems a bit too convenient to me, and I'm surprised anyone with two brain cells to rub together would go along with this kind of stuff. Just goes to show who and what kinds of people the lefties are attracting with this sort of rhetoric. And also, it goes to show the kinds of weak-willed, self-hating, silly-sounding betas AOC is willing to be in a relationship with.
And I think one of the effective ways is just to talk and kind of help teach them about why some of the things they believe or say or think are wrong. Not necessarily racist, but that they're wrong.
Right, because telling someone they are wrong is much easier than saying they're racist. Not really. Both are pretty presumptuous and direct attacks coming from people like you. I mean, do we even think SJWs like this step back and consider whether or not they might be wrong ever? Because I highly doubt it. They're not operating normally or honestly like most of us. For example, before I make a video, a statement, or even just send out a tweet, I might think back and forth and make sure I'm right. Even when going over my past works, I might reconsider or recalibrate or readjust what I'm thinking from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. But liberals don't question themselves ever. They have no self-awareness or ability to self-reflect. That's why they're more concerned with telling everyone else they're wrong or racist, instead of considering for a moment that it might just be them. And this is also why their overt biasness and their over-the-top flagrant anti-white racism has gotten so out of hand. The left has spent so many years and generations bashing us and putting us down, and without a second thought or reconsideration, they just keep doubling down year after year. And that's how now, by current year, it's gotten this out of control.
And that'll sort of chip away and, contribute to some development in this area, but not necessarily take somebody from being a racist to not being a racist in one conversation.
And it's just always being open to learning about racist things that we may have said or done without judgment and defensiveness.
How ironic coming from liberals like you, huh? I think this is just another classic case of left-wing projection on full display once again, especially when they dare to go on and call their opponents defensive here. That's pretty damn rich since, the left are the ones who get defensive when you call out their nonsense. In fact, you could even call everyone defensive when they get attacked, which is precisely why many non-SJWs clap back at them. It's because the left is on the offensive calling all of us racist and bigots, so when you attack us, we're naturally going to deny those claims and defend ourselves back. So of course we're on the defensive. You're the ones calling us heinous things that aren't even true, not in the slightest. And then when we go to defend ourselves, it's actually the Democrats who then become defensive. They concoct little false realities like this idea we live in a world where whites are all racist and minorities never did anything wrong, when really that's far from the truth. What do you guys think? Is AOC and her boo on livestream pretty telling? Why do you think they're so obsessed with calling Americans racist all the time? Well, also they're die-hard and absolutely against calling their preferred groups anything but perfection. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.